So what I want to spend in the next 15 minutes or so talking about really is the HEERF2 emergency support request. And with the HEERF2 emergency support request, I want to first talk about the HEERF1. And last March, HEERF1 was part of the CARES Act, which was the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. And if you recall, last March, this conference was canceled. Everything was shutting down. Students were told they can't come back to campus. Everything was going virtual, and there was just a ton of uncertainty across campus and across the world. And at that time, we were given this funding to help students with that transition. And to facilitate that funding for that transition for the students, what we did was we created an online form for students, and students would go out to this online form and enter all of their information, and then every night, a team member on our staff would download all that information from the students who submit forms for the day. From there, we downloaded information into the spreadsheet. We had this master spreadsheet that our entire team was working on. And then we were reviewing and analyzing and slicing and dicing the data to see how we could award the funding to students. What happened was there was just a ton of back and forth, and there was a lot of different touch points, from the online form to downloading data, to loading it into a spreadsheet, to having everyone in this spreadsheet working, and then oftentimes emailing students back and forth requesting additional information. So there was just a ton of back and forth, a lot of room for user error, whether it's on the student side or on our staff side. So what happened was HEERF2 came along in December 2020 as part of the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. Doesn't roll off your tongue like CARES Act does. But what it did was awarded additional funding for students. And so what we were able to do in February, we built this form in 1 week, from start to finish, from gathering business requirements to design, to configure, testing, had some development work done as creating views, and it was all done in 1 week. And we went live with this form. And what we were able to be is a lot more agile. We were able to be more student-centric, and we were able to really leverage not only GT forms, but also the functionality within PeopleSoft and within SIS. We were able to pre-populate the form, as you'll see, store data on one record, which is extremely huge when we're talking about building out data metrics and visualizations and just analyzing the data for future need. And it took out a lot of the back and forth, and we weren't capturing data in a spreadsheet or email. So what I'm going to do is show you what that looks like from the student side. I'm not going to do a demo, but instead what I'm going to do is I have some slides that have screenshots, and each screenshot represents a segment of the form. So it's a one-page form, just kind of scrolls, the student would scroll from top to bottom. And we're just going to go through each segment as if we were the student working our way through. So right off the bat, we have a big win when we're talking about the eForm and the functionality behind it. Right off the bat, there's the student information segment. And simply by getting at the single sign-on information for a student, we're able to auto-populate a ton of different data elements just based off of the system knowing who's logged in. So previously in HEERF1, we'd have students that had typos, or maybe they used a name that we didn't have in the system, or their phone number was incorrect, or there was a typo in their email. They're filling out the form on the small form factor, and sometimes, there's typos. What we decided to do was auto-populate all of that information in. So this is all pulling in from delivered tables right off the bat within PeopleSoft. One of my favorite parts about eForms is also the ability to hide fields or have fields dynamically built to either hide or show or appear based off of conditional logic. And what's going on within this segment that the user can't see is that we are able to have additional fields, and one of those fields is spring enrollment status indicator. One of the main eligibility requirements for HEERF2 was that the student needed to be enrolled for the spring term. So Eric was able to build a view that we're looking at and pulling into the form and says, is the student enrolled in the spring, yes or no? If yes, the rest of the form auto-populates or it pulls in. But if it's a no, the form ends. And actually, there's another field here that's dynamically built that displays verbiage that says, essentially due to you not being enrolled in the spring term, you're not eligible for HEERF funding, essentially. So again, that's one of my favorite parts, is just the ability to be so agile and dynamic as far as what you can hide from the user, but still have it stored on a table behind the scenes, or have it conditionally built where not every student is seeing the information, but it's there if you need to show it to certain populations. The next segment is the itemized information segment. So what we realized with HEERF 1 is we were asking students to provide a budget. And sometimes students didn't know how to build a budget. They didn't know if a budget was for a month or for a year. And so we were getting a lot of inaccurate data and just a lot of data discrepancies. So this time around, we said, basically, what do you need the money for to help with this emergency need? So that's what this entire segment is doing. A couple of things I wanted to point out here is we decided not to make each field required, where a student would have to go in and actually take action on each field by field. And what we decided to do was there's a total amount field, and that total amount field is constantly leveraging people code and summing up on the fly when a student tabs out of each field. What's nice is we have an edit essentially, or a check on the submit button that is looking to make sure that that total amount is greater than $0. Additionally, going back to the conditional logic that we talked about, we decided that if a student were to request greater than $500, that we wanted a little more information. So at the bottom, you're seeing that all requests greater than $500 text box. That's where we're looking to capture a little more narrative from the student. If they requested $499, they would never see that field. So we just wanted to capture it for those who are requesting greater than $500. This next segment has a lot of great functionality behind it. And from quick glance, it looks like it's just a bunch of yes, no type checkboxes, but there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. So in this particular situation here is we wanted to capture from a very high level the urgency and need for students. So we have these statements out here and we said, can you please tell us which situation best fits your current situation? And we don't want students to have 3 yeses or 2 yeses within each statement. So what we did was, and this is all conditional logic, is we're basically looking at each of the fields and we're saying, if I'm a yes, the other 2 are read only. So as you can see right now, within each statement, all 3 are editable. You can toggle to yes. But what happens is when you toggle 1 to yes, the other 2 become read only. So that way we don't have any data integrity issues or discrepancies. Additionally, there's this constant back and forth within the fields looking to make sure that one of them is a yes for the required fields, because we didn't want students to submit a form without having to at least select yes for one. So there's this constant conversation going back and forth between the fields saying, if I'm not required and you're not required, then you need to be required. So there's that dialogue constantly going on behind the scenes to make sure that at least one of those is required. Additionally, I mentioned earlier that it's nice that with the form, everything's within PeopleSoft. And what's nice is all the data is stored to one record. And GT Forms is amazing by itself, but then when you incorporate it with some tips and tricks within like PS Query, you can really build the functionality out further. So what we did was we also created expressions to assign a score or a weighted value for each of these statements. So for example, within the first statement, there's 3 options. The top toggle is worth 3 points and then 2 and then 1. And then we were able to assign a numerical value via a case statement in an expression. So that way we're not just sorting and filtering off of yeses and nos, but rather we're looking at a combined score, or, this student has a 3 and a 3, that's a 6, that's a severity 1. So we were able to do some different things like that, leveraging PeopleSoft functionality. Additionally, Eric was able to create another hidden field here where he's doing that math on the fly and assigning a severity of 1, 2, or 3 based off of what a student enters here. This entire segment for the previously declined loan segment is conditionally built. So a couple times I've talked about fields are conditionally built. What's nice about this segment, the entire segment is conditionally built. So if I'm a student and I don't have any previously declined loans, I would never see this segment ever. And then furthermore, within this segment, each of the fields are conditionally built. So in this example here, we have previously declined federal loans and previously declined institutional loans. If a student didn't have any previously declined institutional loans, they would never see that field. So that's just conditionally built. And really, take it a step further, we said, would the student like to have their loans reinstated? We wanted to be student-centric. We didn't want to just show all these loans that you'd previously declined. Like, that doesn't do any good. But if we're able to say, would you like your loans reinstated? And then if they say yes, we know to send that to a loans team member to work, to review the student's eligibility, to make sure they're still eligible for the loans, and then reinstate those loans in an offered status. And similarly, there's this offered loan segment, and this is another segment that's conditionally built. So if I didn't have any offered loans, I would never see this segment. I would not have to scroll through this and see $0 within the fields. And we wanted to provide instructions if the students needed those loans on how to go and approve or to go and accept those loans. And this is a good example as far as the conditional fields within the conditional segment. You'll see that there's institutional loans, but this student doesn't have any offered loans in a federal status. So within each segment, we had offered loans, offered institutional loans, offered federal loans, and then we had declined institutional loans and declined federal loans. And this student doesn't have any offered federal loans. So you're not seeing that field. And then last, what's really nice about HEERF 2 funding is students could decide if they wanted to apply the, the award towards their spring balance, or if they wanted it back as a refund. So we needed to capture that information up front to see what item type to assign with the award. Going back to the PeopleSoft functionality in conjunction with eForms, we were able to build additional case statements that assign an item type based off of this field, as well as some other data elements that are stored behind the scenes. And we needed this information because with item types, there's different charge priorities. So we needed numerous item types. As far as the time savings, so again, this form took us 1 week to build out from beginning to end. I mean, from design, business requirements, all the way through to go live. And it's cut the processing time in half for our different team members, which is huge when you think about all the operational tasks that folks have to do during these times as well. The review, the triage, it's all streamlined. Everything is within student information system. There's not the back and forth with the students. Everything's caught and captured up front. And then we're able to use, again, I can't reiterate this enough, using PeopleSoft functionality with eForms really makes it an even more dynamic tool. And eForms is absolutely amazing. And I can't say enough good things about it. As far as the future state, what eForms allows us the ability to do is to really have a streamlined transition from HEERF 2 to the next phase is going to be, we're going to go back to a non-HEERF emergency support request. Because we always want to have an emergency support request form out there for students. But in between HEERF 2 and HEERF 3, there's going to be a downtime where we're just going to have a basic emergency support form out on our student center. So what eForms allows us the ability to do is just take an XML file where we have our changes in our development environment and migrate those changes through to production. So it's a very streamlined approach. And future, we talk about cutting the processing time in half. We didn't even, scratch the surface really of a lot of the functionality eForms has to offer. We're looking to build out the workflow and then also automate the wording if certain criteria and data elements are met. So we were very happy with what we're able to build out. And it's very student centric and really allowed our team to continue on with operational tasks while working with this funding. So with that said, I'm going to hand it back over to Kim, who's going to talk about security requests.